Hey, what's going on everyone? It's FreakyDude99 and Season of the Wish is here, so you know what that means, new builds. And for today, I got a destructive Solar Titan build for you that will be sure to make the newest seasonal activity, the Coil, a breeze to clear along with any master content you decide to jump into. With Season of the Wish, we received some updates and balance changes to our mods, and while many think some of these nerfs were too much, I'm here to show you that they can still be as strong as before. Of course, with all my builds, there's a picture at the end of the video, along with a dim link in the description for easy copying. Without further ado, let's jump into the build. Starting with the subclass, we have our super ability Burning Maul or Hammer of Soul, depending on your preference. Burning Maul can get way more damage off on grounded enemies, but if you're facing content with lots of gaps and flying enemies, then you want to go Hammer of Soul for its superb range. We have insane super regen with this build, so pop your super whenever it's up. Then for our class ability, we go Rally Barricade for its lower cooldown, and for the weapon bonuses we get while standing behind it. The reload speed and damage fall off increase are incredible, as many weapons suffer from long reload speeds, and with how fast we can regen our class ability, it means we should never have to suffer again. Then for our melee ability, we have Throwing Hammer, which just shreds through many bosses and champions when Roaring Flames is stacked up. This season, it received a change, giving it a 1.4 second delay between picking it up and being able to throw it again, and while it does take a little adjusting to get used to, you'll find it's still really deadly in any piece of content. What you can do is, while your hammer is recharging, you can throw in a punch to apply some scorch and extra damage with your Roaring Flames. Then for our grenade, we have a couple of choices, being from Solar Grenade for single target damage, to Healing Grenade for harder content, and then Thermite Grenade for ad clearing. It all depends on your preference and what content you're in, but we get our grenade back really quickly, so feel free to use whatever one you want to use and just toss them. Then for our first aspect, we have Roaring Flames, which makes a number of effects, so we'll have to run through. First, we get stacking solar ability damage on ability or ignition takedowns, which start at 20% at 1 stack, 44% at 2 stacks, and 73% damage at 3 stacks, which makes our throwing hammer and grenade do crazy damage. Then second, when we have at least 1 stack of Roaring Flames, our empowered melee counts as powered and applies 30 Scorch, 40 when we have Ember of Ashes, so it also gets the Roaring Flames damage increase and activates other powered melee effects like Heavy-Handed. If you ever lose your hammer, you can keep your Roaring Flame stacks up by just punching everything till it comes back. Then for our second aspect, we have Sol Invictus, which also has multiple effects. First, any solar ability or Scorch takedown and Hammer of Soul impact creates a sunspot for 5 seconds that damages and scorches enemies inside. If we are standing in the sunspot, we refresh its duration and it can last up to a total of 12 seconds. And we also get Sol Invictus for 5 seconds. Sol Invictus gives us ×1 restoration, 40% decreased super drain, and 100% additional grenade and melee regen, which is just awesome to have in any piece of content, and with how this season is, there's always sunspots around as we are constantly scorching and destroying enemies with our abilities. Moving on to our fragments, we have Ember of Eruption, which makes our ignitions 20% bigger. This has some interesting unknown effects, but as a whole, it's great to have this season, as we cause way more ignitions than ever before. Next, we have Ember of Empyrean, which makes solar weapons and ability takedowns extend our radiant and restoration by 4 seconds, up to a cap of 12. With this, we're never not buffed, so we can go in a lot more with that constant healing buff applied. Then we have Ember of Ashes, which makes Scorch stacks apply 50% more generally, but not to everything. So on Roaring Flames, we apply 30 Scorch on our punch, so 4 punches for an ignition, but with Ashes, it makes it apply 40 Scorch, so we get 3 punches for an ignition. The more ignitions happening, the better, so we want to be applying more Scorch stacks. And then Ember of Searing makes defeating Scorched targets grant melee energy for whenever we lose our hammer, and then plus it makes Scorched enemies spawn fire sprites, which give us 12.5% grenade energy on pickup, so we spawn a ton of them and we get tons of grenade energy back from doing it. And that does it for this subclass, and on to the weapons, where we have a number of solar options to choose from this season. With how easy it is to trigger Radiant, we can pretty much use anything we want, even if it's not an artifact perk 1. This of course makes this build perfect to pair with the new Season Pass exotic Dragon's Breath, which has some insane scorching application and damage. It's also amazing as you can fire a rocket and then pop your super to just stack a ton of damage onto a single target for just absolute melting. Then you also have stuff like Sunshot, which is always fun to use, especially with Unstoppable Hand Cannon this season, and some of the artifact perks available. The more explosions happening on screen, the better, of course. But this also means that legendary weapons are sometimes better, as they can actually roll Incandescent, which applies 30 Scorch stacks, 40 with Ashes, on enemy takedowns to nearby enemies. Callous Mini-Tool, Trust, Zauli's Bane, Amit, Drang Baroque, and so many more. You really have your pick of preference this season, and for those of you with conditional finality, you'll be having a lot of fun with this build, so maybe go try out Root of Nightmares to go and grab it. The instant freeze and ignition pumps insane damage, and it just synergizes so well with this build. That's it for the weapons, and on to the artifact perks, where we can take 3 anti-champion perks depending on our choice and our weapons. These also grant the weapon type the Overcharge buff, which is a 25% damage increasing content with the Overcharge modifier, which tends to be legend activities and harder. Then we grab Kindling Trigger, which makes solar weapons apply 30 Scorch, 45 with Ashes, to any enemy who isn't scorched already. This leads us to spawning more sunspots and causing more ignitions for more damage. This also makes any solar weapon more viable, as being able to apply Scorch is important for spawning sunspots. And then we also get From Whence You Came, which gives 5% increased ability damage on scorned and taken enemies. For column 3, we grab Flint Striker, which makes rapid precision hits with a solar weapon or rapid solar weapon takedowns grant Radiant for 10 seconds, which Radiant is a 25% damage increase to our weapons, and it grants weapons anti-barrier if they have no other stunning capabilities. Flint Striker makes it so easy to get Radiant this season, and with Ember of Empyrean we can extend it indefinitely so it's always up. And then we also make sure to grab Torch, which is a 5% increased weapon damage while we have Radiant and an enemy is affected by stasis or strand effects like Slow, Sever, or Suspend. And then Heart of Flame, which makes our super cast grant nearby allies Radiant, and then depending on the amount of allies nearby, it increases our overall super damage. For column 4, we go ahead and grab Revitalizing Blast, so we can apply Weaken to bosses and champions on our solar ability hit for 15% increased damage. With Bonk Hammer, we can apply this all the time. And then we also grab Overload Rocket Launchers for its overcharge buff and Champion Stunning. Finally, for column 5, we go Raise of Precision, so while Radiant, our solar precision takedowns cause an instant ignition, which makes us destroy adds everywhere. And then we grab Argent Ordnance, so when we fire a rocket, it consumes 1 armor charge for increased damage and reload speed. With Dragon's Breath, this will go so hard. If you are playing solo, however, make sure to slap on Solo Operative, as it is a 15% increase to all damage while solo in any activity. And that does it for the artifact perks. Now on to the armor mods. Starting on with the helmet, we have Font of Wisdom for a plus 30 in intellect while we have an armor charge. We have Hands On for extra super energy on our melee takedowns, and then Harmonic Siphon so we can spawn orbs of power with our solar weapon takedowns. These all make our super come back way quicker for more fun. Then, quickly touching on stat focusing, we grab 100 resilience for the 30% damage resistance on all damage and the lower barricade cooldown. Then we focus discipline so we can throw as many grenades as possible, and then finally we focus recoveries for that quicker health regen rate. For our gauntlets, we have our exotic ACD 0 feedback fence, which makes melee hits grant 1 armor charge, so with Bonk Hammer and Roaring Flames, we always have armor charges active. While we have an armor charge active, we get melee damage resistance, so we can go in a lot more, and then when receiving a melee hit, we release an arc burst that damages and jolts nearby targets. We get infinite armor charges with this exotic, so we're constantly releasing jolt bursts, and then we always have an armor charge for when we need it, whether for Argent Ordnance or for our Grenade Kickstart mod. Speaking of which, we do run Grenade Kickstart, which makes our grenade throws give energy back by consuming all of our armor charges. The more charges, the more energy it gives back. This, of course, means we always are spending our armor charges, but we're always getting them back through our melee hits. Then, through our melee hits, we're also doing Impact Induction, which gives 12% grenade energy on a 7-second cooldown. And then we also have Heavy Handed, which spawns orbs of power on a melee power takedown, which has a 10-second cooldown. So by throwing Bonk Hammer and punching with Roaring Flames, we can get ourselves an infinite loop of charging and grenade energy. Then for our chest armor, we always go 3 resistance mods. We go 2 of the same type that match the activity's threat modifier, so double void resist for a void threat activity, and then if we can, we run concussive dampener, but if not, we just go an arc resist or some other elemental resist for 15% damage resistance against that. This ensures that we stay defended against the most powerful damage type in the content, and then also any additional damage that might be dealt. Down to the legs, we get double solar weapon surge for 17% increased solar weapon damage while we have an armor charge, which is pretty much always, so our dragon's breath and solar weapons do crazy more damage that stacks up with everything else we're getting. And then we also have a recuperation for a health burst on orb of power pickup, which is always nice to have as restoration gives constant healing, but the burst is nice in those tricky situations. And then for our Titan mark, we got Bomber for 12% grenade energy on barricade cast for extra regen. Then we have Bulwark Finisher, so while we have 3 armor charges and perform a finisher, we then get a Void Overshield for 8 seconds. This plus restoration and our ACD feedback fence with jolting means we're a multi-elemental Titan just wreaking havoc and raining fire. And then we grab a Font of Restoration for a plus 30 in our recovery while we have an armor charge. Make sure to not go above 70 recovery, as if you do, that will result in wasted stats. And that does it for the armor mods, and I have to say this build has been a blast to start the season with. It destroys everything, it tanks anything, and it'll be such a good time to play with as you take full advantage of the season's artifact perks, and with the new Dragon's Breath exotic, we just rain fire everywhere. This build excels in getting up close and hammering and punching everything and anything. By doing that, we generate tons of armor charge, orbs of power, and grenade energy so we can throw them as much as possible. By mixing in a punch in between a hammer throw, we get the extra damage and scorching off, and then with kindling trigger, we can shoot an enemy and throw in 2 punches for a quick ignition on any enemy, and you are just melting everything once you get that combo down. So you want to shoot with your solar weapon, hammer, punch, boom, ignition, any enemy, down. This build can clear content really easily, whether it's the newest seasonal activity, the Coil, or a Master Nightfall. This build will get it done. Of course, if you need a picture of the build, there's one on screen along with a dim link in the description for easy copying. Thank you everybody so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like, and why not subscribe if you haven't, as only 4% of you actually are. It would be a great help to me and the channel, and also show YouTube that you're enjoying my content. If you have anything you want to say, leave it in the comments as I try and respond to everything, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out everyone.